Hey guys, if you're interested in checking out a video version of the show, please visit the LOWKEY GEEK channel on YouTube. There you can not only catch the video version of the podcast, but you can also check out my other projects and short form video that I produce. You can find a link in the description. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hey, what's up, everybody? The movie boys are back this week with a brand new episode of Movie Time, and I have a feeling this is going to be kind of a doozy of an episode. So, this week we're going to be talking about movies based off of two iconic figures. One is David Bowie with Moonage Daydream, that's playing in theaters now, and the recently released Netflix movie Blonde. So, we'll be talking about Marilyn Monroe, and there's a lot of controversy around this movie. Blake and I have some thoughts we want to share with all of you. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite snack. It's that time for Movie Time coming up right now. Hey, what's up, everybody? The boys are back in town. It's another episode of Movie Time. You got myself, Rene, LOWKEY GEEK here, and my boy, Blake, the Wolf. What's going on, dude?
Rene, it's been a few weeks. I've missed this. We've seen a few new movies, and a couple of them we've both seen. And, my favorite thing to do when we both see a movie, we talk about it.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about it. What up?
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back doing this with you. For those of you who are regulars, we weren't able to record the last week and a half or 2 weeks because I was actually on the road. I decided to do a road trip to Denver, Colorado for my niece's wedding, which was fantastic and everything. But boy, 50 plus hours of driving, it's just a lot of driving. And I needed some time to recoup when I got back. But yeah, this whole week has been like movie catch up for me. So I've been trying my best to catch up on stuff. We're not going to be able to talk about a lot of the movies that we saw. We hope to maybe later on down the line cover those eventually, which I'm sure we will. But this particular episode, we are going to be talking about two movies right now. And that is the new Netflix movie that just released called Blonde, a movie about Marilyn Monroe, and the David Bowie kind of theatrical biopic experience called Moonage Daydream.
Moonage Daydream.
And it's an interesting episode because we're talking about two big icons in pop culture history. You may look at these people as maybe sometimes controversial or what have you. Definitely one of the movies is pretty controversial as of right now, and we'll talk about that as we go into it. But if you are new to the channel and you're just coming across this video and you're seeing these two knuckleheads talking back and forth here, welcome. This is the Movie Time podcast where two buddies get together and we bullshit about movies and we talk about stuff. We usually talk about what the latest movie is of the week, or we kind of just pick a movie topic and we just talk about that. So definitely thank you for watching. Don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff. If you enjoy what you're seeing and you want to see more of this stuff. If you prefer an audio version of this show, you can find us on your podcast platform of choice. Just do a search for LOWKEY GEEK and you'll find the channel there where you could download this episode and many others. And I'll give a disclaimer first in the top here. These are biopics. So we're going to be just going on full ham on these things. If you don't want to get spoiled on anything that you haven't seen yet, that's your choice. Maybe pause this right now, bookmark this, save this video, come back to it after you've seen it. Or if you just want to hear us talk about stuff and you don't really care, or you know what you're getting into, obviously you're watching this right now, then continue watching, hang out, and listen to us yaddle and smaddle about these two movies. So first off, all right, I have a feeling this is going to be a pretty hot topic, a hot subject to talk about. We've talked about
some like it hot, Rene.
Hey, and that is true. Some do, and maybe it gives you an itch for 7 years after thinking about it. Or maybe some people prefer the conversation.
There he goes. Gentlemen prefer The movie Blonde, for
That's
sure.
right.
Okay, we'll
Um,
get to our reviews. I'm
yeah.
excited to talk about this one, man.
Oh yeah. We've talked about biopics before. Elvis comes to mind, and that was like a pretty popular episode of ours when we talked. And it's one of those things because you and I are pretty familiar with Elvis's story and all that. Now, when it comes to Marilyn Monroe, um, I am only familiar with obviously the not controversy, but the things that stood out in her life and in her career. You know, um, her start in Hollywood, what she did, a little bit of her childhood growing up. I feel like and obviously the relationships and everything. Those are the things I'm a little bit familiar with. This movie definitely does take cues from a novel that it's based off of. That is somewhat like a autobiography on Marilyn Monroe. But this director in general really took a lot of liberties from what I've read and what I've seen. It's directed by Andrew Dominic, who I'm not exactly too familiar with. Blake, are you more familiar with his stuff in the past?
All of our letterbox bros who are going in the comment section and mad at Rene because he's not too familiar with Andrew Dominic.
Sorry.
Uh, yeah, I'll just go that route real quick. First off, it's the novel's technically biographical fiction, and so it's interesting
Yeah,
because the movie and the novel they have to do things like they change people's names or they don't refer to someone's name because like okay, did this thing really happen with this person? I do still think of this as a biopic. Biopic. Damn it. Okay. I
you could
said the
say
word.
it
I
either
used to call
way.
them biopic for forever,
Biopic.
like a biopsy. Um, at the end of the day, like there's characters who are representational of it's pretty clear. Her second husband is Joe DiMaggio. Her third husband is Arthur
Sure.
Miller. There's no
Yeah.
confusion for the audience who
Yeah.
know these references at all. But did those things actually happen? Did JFK in that scene actually happen? We'll be sure to get to that one. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's a biopic in the way that it tells the fantastical story of Marilyn
Mhm.
Monroe. And one question is like, if things are believed about someone and printed about someone, are they true? Like, did they actually happen in the closed room with no cameras
Sure.
and no witnesses? Like,
Right.
but if everyone believes it, or like, and so at the end of the day, I kind of think of it as a biopic, but it's also like a morality story of like
Mm.
this type of person. This because Marilyn Monroe is an icon. She essentially
Yeah.
transcends her individual self and experiences, and James Dean, they like kind of they die young and they live forever and they are
Mhm.
bigger than any one human body could ever contain. So do the actual facts matter as much as this is a story about the legacy of someone, and in some ways the very like titillating gossipy factoids about their life that may or may not be true, and in some things that are true and almost unreal to believe. Which any good biopic, you have the uh, when reality is better than fiction,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
so that's one aspect. As far as going back to Andrew Dominic, for me, it's the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford
Yeah.
is his beloved Letterboxd Bros movie. For it's a lot of cinephiles have it as like their number one, like among their top movies. And it's the cinematography by Roger Deakins. The other one is Killing Them Softly, starring Brad Pitt and produced by Brad Pitt's company Plan B. Loved that movie a lot, but it was more of like a shoot 'em up, kind of a Guy Ritchie type of
Mhm.
movie. So I've seen a few of his and loved them very much. This one very different, although still like there's a lot of directing. He's a very heavy-handed director in his own
Sure.
way. You definitely feel his effect on the movie, but we can get into more of that stuff. But yeah, love Andrew Dominic as a director. This one was a turn left, but it was interesting.
Interesting. Yes. That is a nice way to put it for sure. So I'll give my little take on the movie so far. So, or just off the bat here, the things I really appreciated about this movie. One, I thought the the directing and the cinematography was really gorgeous to watch. All his choices to switch between widescreen in the 3x4, the black and white to the color, a lot of the transitions that he used, when Ana de Armas could be in one room, she gets up and she just walks and she's in a totally different scenario.
Yeah.
All that stuff was done beautifully and brilliantly. I really, really love that a lot. The use of sound design and sound effects. Now, you watched it in a theater, I watched it at home. So I don't know how it came across, but he would emphasize sounds a lot throughout this movie.
Yeah.
The crackling of the fire, the buzzing of a fly, the
The camera
unwrapping of a wrapper. Yeah,
shots from the paparazzi that sound like gunfire.
right, right. Yeah, like I really, really appreciated that and how it emphasized certain moments as they were happening. Really, really well done. Um, Ana de Armas, her acting in this movie, this is probably the best um, thing that she's ever done to date. I've loved her when she would pop up in, a lot of the action movies that she's done, because she's done a lot of like really like action movies, kind of like the femme fatale or whatever the case is, the unexpected person that you would know who would think who can kick ass and be a badass and all that, and because you only look at her and she's gorgeous and everything, but then she can really kick your butt and stuff like that. I'm so used to seeing her like that, and I want her to do more stuff like that. Seeing her in this role, being extremely vulnerable, being basically, she took a lot of risk, I think, in this role, and she
Yeah.
was very open in her acting. And I read an interview about her and how she felt doing a lot of the stuff that she did in this movie. And she said she was able to do it because she did feel safe and she felt very
Hmm.
comfortable. And the
Hmm.
people on set and around her were able to make her feel that way. Because, my God, the stuff that she went through in this movie or that she acted out, um, I think it's rare to see someone at her stage or someone that has a name today do the stuff that she did in this movie, because there's a lot of stuff that she did, but I think her acting is brilliant, brilliant. um, I wouldn't be surprised if somehow she gets talked about during the whole Oscar race when it starts happening and when
Yeah.
the buzz and all that starts really happening. Now, as far as the movie's concerned, um, one, it was really long. It was really, really long. It's like 2 hours and 47 minutes or something like that. Uh, there were times where it felt it, but those times where it felt it was when the worst stuff was happening on screen. Um, I felt very uncomfortable most of the time watching this movie.
Hmm.
I It made me angry. I found myself getting really frustrated, and you know, yeah, the story of Marilyn Monroe is kind of up and down, right? It's not an all time happy story. Obviously, she's gone through a lot of stuff, and this movie, pretty much details everything from childhood to her up and coming start to her relationships, all that stuff, all the way through to the very end, right? Now, obviously, it skips certain things, and it doesn't tell every specific detail, but it gives you enough to kind of portray how this woman was objectified and victimized by the Hollywood industry, right? Now, we've heard stories about a lot of stuff that happened, especially in old time Hollywood, right? There's been a lot of stories that we've heard. There's been a stigma that's been hanging around Hollywood about how women, especially actresses, were treated back in the day, even to today. When and it all came out front, especially with the Me Too movement and all that. Um, I felt like this movie pretty much treated the character of Marilyn Monroe the same way Hollywood treated her in real life.
Hmm.
I felt like this movie pretty much glorified the objectification of this character,
You
where
do.
I do. I
Interesting.
honestly do.
Okay.
And
We're gonna have to suss that out because I
that's
think
fine.
I feel the opposite, but I want to hear you out first.
Yeah, I mean, like I
Huh.
said, like when you tell a tragic story like hers, I mean, I applaud the balls that Andrew took to really be so raw with everything and really just like not going to sugarcoat anything, not going to, be, there's not a happy ending here. Just basically be all out and show the rawness of like the details that he wanted to explore within Marilyn's life. Norma Jean. But I did feel that there were a lot of times where there was so much emphasis on the bad.
Mm.
When I said things were lasted long on screen, it was always during the parts that she was going through her worst times, and like when she was like mainly objectified, victimized, abused, like all this stuff. Again, we don't know the specific details of these scenarios, right? So it could have very well been like this, or it could have been his liberty and his take on it, and this is how he wanted to portray it. I felt a lot of that stuff was not necessary. I
Mm.
feel like another creative eye would have been able to do the same thing by showing less, maybe, you
Mm.
know, hinting at stuff, maybe showing a little peek through a keyhole or through a
Mm.
window or, the before and after or something like that. Now, if he wanted, if he was looking to punch you in the gut, and that's the kind of effect that he wanted to have on you with this type
Mm.
of movie, A plus, he did that for sure. At least, especially for me. But I did feel like one of the reasons why this movie is so controversial is because I do feel like he really not kind of slammed Marilyn and just be like, this is my piece where I'm just gonna like show that she's a whore and this and that and blah, blah all that kind of stuff like that. I see a lot of reviewers saying those things. I'm not gonna go that far, but I will say that it definitely there were a lot of things and choices that he made that I thought were very unnecessary. And at the end of the day, when the movie finally ended, I was glad it ended. I was really, I watched it all the way through because
Mm.
I was invested and I kind of wanted to see where it went because I wanted to really talk about it truthfully and everything. But I felt extremely uncomfortable watching this movie.
Mm.
Again, it doesn't have anything to do with Ana de Armas's performance. Adrian Brody was great in this. Bobby Cannavale was really good in his role with what he had to do. Everyone in this movie acted out really well. But I think it's just the story choices and
Mm.
the things that were decided to kind of highlight and emphasize. I really it did not sit well with me at all. And plus, I don't know. Have you heard about any interviews he's done about this movie recently?
No, no.
So there's this one article I found on IndieWire. I'll share it on the screen with everyone right now. Blonde director Andrew Dominic dismisses Gentlemen Prefer Blondes as film about well-dressed whores. Quote unquote, does anyone watch Marilyn Monroe movies? Asked Dominic, director
Mm.
of the Marilyn Monroe movie Blonde. So basically, this article goes through basically, the one interviewing him tries to get a feel of how he feels about Marilyn,
Mm.
and it doesn't really come across as he has any specificity of appreciating Marilyn for what she's done or, seeing her as the icon that everyone sees her as. Um, in the interview, I'll read another excerpt here. Dominic also calls Monroe's famed Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend moment in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes akin to sisterly advice to loose women. If you're gonna fuck, make sure you get paid, Dominic mused on the message. Or is it just romanticized whoredom? So very, very harsh words, I think, in my opinion, or harsh opinions, I should say, about Marilyn's line of work. So was this a guy that would really do justice for a character like Marilyn in doing a movie like what he did? Um, I don't know. I question that
Mm,
right now, and maybe this is why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling.
okay.
Um, and before I drop it off to you, there were also some things that he took liberties with, like the whole threesome relationship. Like that's not true. That never happened. That's already been debunked by people who know the history and facts and all that, because the timeline doesn't even make sense, and all that. Especially like receiving the letters from her quote unquote father when it was really this one guy, and all that. Like that timeline doesn't really make sense. Um, like you said, the JFK thing, we don't know if that really happened. Basically, where she was just treated as an on-call mistress, and basically raped. And then when she found out she was pregnant, a whole conspiracy cover-up about the whole thing. By the way, the reason why this movie is rated NC-17 is probably because of that one particular scene in this movie
Mm.
where she just basically gives JFK a blowjob, and the camera stays on that part for a very, very long time. But that's probably why we got the NC-17 rating there. But yeah, and then the domestic abuse received from Joe DiMaggio. It wasn't shown on camera, but boy, you heard it, and it was very brutal and all that. That's probably true because there have been sources that have reported that when she did that part in that movie, she came back to set the next day with bruises that she had to hide and all that. So that's probably all factual and all that stuff like that. But again, a lot of hearsay and all that. But yeah, um, I I don't think this is a movie I can really recommend to anybody,
Mm.
because it would,
Hmm.
unless I know that they can sit through it with an objective mind and kind of just like, if I say this is probably the best performance Ana de Armas ever made, you should watch it mainly because of that. If I feel like they can do so and appreciate that performance from her and be open to the movie, then I'll go ahead and do that.
Hmm.
But if I feel like someone's just a casual moviegoer and all that, I would say probably you'd want to stay away from this one. Um, Also, the whole thing about the daddy issues, I mean, he made that very clear from the beginning, and how it played all throughout. When she, the fact that she has to call all of her lovers and husbands daddy all the time, because she's always looking for that father like figure to protect her and take care of her. That also made me extremely uncomfortable. But again, this is just me. These are just my opinions. This is just how I take the movie. Other people will receive and take the movie very differently, I'm sure. But Blake, what are your thoughts and take? This is a heavy subject, so,
Yeah,
and yeah, I
uh,
definitely don't want you to hold back. But yeah, what
I
what
won't.
did what did you feel about the movie?
So I'll give like my overall, and then
Yeah.
we'll get a little more into some the what you didn't like about it, because I
Yeah.
think I'm coming from the opposite end. But I hear what you're saying, and it makes sense to me for sure.
Mhm.
Um, I think at the end of the day, when this is based on a book, and the book does a lot of the fiction part, and if it's a morality tale, and I'll go more big picture. I went in this movie thinking it was going to be a glamorous movie about a Hollywood icon, a
So
very
did I.
glamorous
Yeah.
woman. I thought it would be a very silver screen um, rendition, and romanticizing, and there'd of course be like every biopic where, okay, they became famous, now they're going to start drinking too much, and
Yeah.
then they'll have some issue, but then they'll overcome it, something like that. And I knew her story was more tragic than that. I didn't think
Yeah.
they would lean into it. Not only did they lean into it, that's all that this movie was.
Right.
So
Yeah.
up front, I wrote down content warnings for the movie out of a list. Like I went through a list of like, here's all the possible content warnings, and like grabbed the ones that were. So basically, child abuse, domestic violence,
Yep.
sexual assault, miscarriage, substance abuse, mental illness, and sexism, misogyny. And basically every moment of this movie is touching on one of these things, and there's like about 3 minutes where she's happy, she moves out of LA, she gets a beach house with her third husband, and you go, oh cool, they'll take it easy for, oh no, fuck, it's back, and immediately goes back into the brutal of it all.
Mm.
I don't. While I did enjoy the movie, and I actually enjoyed the choices they made that you didn't seem to enjoy. I can't recommend it to anybody. I was talking to a friend about it yesterday, actually, and I said, "Oh, dude, it was so good. Don't ever watch it, no matter what. I really liked it,
Yep.
and I know you would love it, but never ever watch this movie under any circumstance because I know this friend and I know their sensibility."
Yeah.
I, I the joke we're making is that there's some movies out there that only one person in each friend group sees, and they go back to their friend group and they go, "Oh my god, that was an incredible piece of filmmaking. Don't ever watch it, no matter what."
Yeah.
And everyone kind of like makes it into this like, do I really want to watch Requiem for a Dream? Am I really willing to ruin a whole weekend or a whole month? I left this theater and had a hard time walking. I had to
Mm.
stop somewhere on the way home and get water because I was panicky. This is the first movie this has happened in a long time. I had to excuse myself during part of the movie, which I'm not going to go into like my personal history. Um, but I had to excuse myself and sit in the bathroom stall for about 10 minutes and try to like get out of the theater and out of, and I'm actually feeling it now. It's weird. Like I just felt like a rush into my head
Do you
of
mind if I ask which part?
yeah, for sure.
Okay.
It's her mom in the hospital when she goes to visit her.
Yeah.
That
That
one,
was
and
rough.
I
Yeah.
think almost anyone who's had some
Yeah.
experience with these content warnings we laid out will have moments like that because the movie leans into it so fucking hard. And there's a lot of people out there who are going to go into this movie thinking it's going to be a lovely Hollywood glamour story. And then at that moment, or one of the any other moments in this, what, almost 3 hour movie, will go, oh fuck, I'm not ready for this.
Mm-hmm.
Can't imagine how many people are going to watch this on Netflix where they
Mm-hmm.
just see, oh my god, the new Marilyn Monroe movie. I love Ana de Armas. Click play. It's almost like they should have had like a 5 minute like mind clearing exercise, a therapist leading it, and then like they check in on with you afterward. I
Yeah.
was properly not okay. In fact, when I went, I Ana de Armas's performance was so enrapturing, so good. When I went to the bathroom during the movie, my hair was brown when I went in, and then I popped out. I washed my hands. I looked up, and then that's how. Because last time we recorded, it was brown, and that's what happened during the
That
movie. It
explains it. That explains
literally,
it.
it was like chemical bleach on my head. The movie does it seriously burns in a lot of those ways. My only real curiosity going into it was I heard someone complaining about Ana de Armas's casting and her accent that they saw in the trailer. About 5 minutes in the movie, I said, "Oh, that's not going to be a problem."
Yeah.
I think part of it is what happens in biopics like this is the first, and it happens with anyone doing an accent work. Is Leonardo DiCaprio or Brad Pitt? They're great actors. They do an accent,
Mm-hmm.
and then it falls a few times, and people pull
Sure.
those moments and they go, well, "This is the worst accent work ever." What usually happens is in the movie, the first 5-10 minutes, they're very focused on getting the accent right, and then they kind of like ease off it, and then by the end, you like, if that's done correctly, like everything in a movie, is it on the big theater or is it on my TV screen? Is the volume too loud or whatever? Like you just get used to things
Yeah.
during a movie because you're so into that experience, it becomes reality.
Yeah.
There was a few times,
I will yeah, I
yeah.
will say the one time where it was really noticeable is when she was having that sit down with Arthur Miller, and they were talking about, yeah, she was giving her advice about, oh, I want to do this with this character,
Yeah.
and that like it felt like she just forgot about it, and I felt this was Anna really talking at that moment.
And I think at the end of the day, I also, so one, she did such a great job acting,
Yeah.
and that was so rare that I was fine with it. And it feels like one of those things, like on a technicality, someone can say, "Oh, this movie was historically inaccurate, therefore it's bad," or "Her accent was inaccurate for a few moments, so therefore it's bad." Overall, is Ana de Armas true to this version of Marilyn Monroe? And I think the real question at the end of the day for any movie is it telling its story well, and is it staying true to the story it's telling, not
Hmm.
necessarily history? It's a question that happens with actors is the Oscars often reward someone who does a really good impression, but what I think is much more important is do you capture the essence of the person, regardless of
Hmm.
what their nose look like or their hair color or any other factor about them? is did you capture the essence of that in this version of the story you're trying to tell? And I think she did a damn good job at that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, the cinematography, hearing you talk about it, because it was so well done. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because you liked the editing a lot, but sorry, the directing, the cinematography, but also it was very heavy-handed at
Hmm.
times, similar to how heavy-handed the story was. The actual plot is showing things and describing them in detail that are really hard to look at straight on. And the director is showing a very heavy hand with how much emphasis they're having on what you're looking at.
Hmm.
Any normal person holding a camera who is allowed to make a movie can like put a camera on two actors. This one is there's a lot of intention to it. So I would say like heavy-handed is one of the biggest words of this
Sure.
movie.
That's a good
Um,
way. Yeah.
the some of the acting choices are very loud. The costuming, the black and white, the color, very sometimes melodramatic at worst, but most of the time it feels pretty earned. Um, I like seeing people take big swings, and I do feel like it hit. On this one, the question of like when you're talking about what you loved, and like they did black and white and color, they changed the ratio of the
Hmm.
screen. There were a lot of things that they did. Was that too heavy-handed? And I would normally say yes. There's some directors who are just they learned a lot of stuff at film school and they want to try it all out. When I like it is when it actually helps tell the story, and in
Sure.
this case, it absolutely did, in my opinion. There's some of them where you go, well, why did he go to full color there? Why did the aspect
Right.
ratio change? But like, it's one of those you might not understand it first, but after like a couple viewings or few, you could at least develop a pretty good theory on, oh, he does this during this time of her life, and maybe this is why.
Yeah.
Um,
Like the way I was looking, I was, because again, I when I watch this movie or any movie, I always look at it with two mindsets, right? One, just the movie as in general, right? And then two, the art of making the movie,
right,
the art in the movie.
right,
So I was trying to see, okay, is he switching from color to black and white to differentiate reality versus what's in her mind or what she's seeing? Is it going from widescreen to, the cropped version
right.
because this is, a transition from this to that? And I feel like in some cases it was, but in other cases I could not tell why he decided to make that choice. So like to your point, was it too heavy-handed? I'm sure, yeah, I could probably say it was for sure. But in his mind, there has to have been a reason, right?
Oh,
So
I
if
think there
there's like a
was.
yeah,
I'd be happy to I'd be happy to theorize it. What I actually need to do is go back with a notebook and mark, okay, this is what's
sure.
happening with this, whatever. But
Mhm.
this would be an interesting one for any film school class to do, which is
Mhm.
just like come up with theories on why he made these choices. Because there's a lot of choices that the director is
Yeah.
making, and you can see him working throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Which to me partially makes sense regardless of what the meaning was, because this is a movie about Hollywood and heavy-handedness and Hollywood's effect on people. Um, there are movie makers here who have too much power. And in this case, having a very loud director and cinematography and editing, the the Hollywood system of that day has an outsized effect on the movies that
Mhm.
are created and the actors. And there are people who are literally forced to date other people in order to better their careers, in order to help
Right.
make the studios more money, etc. Like we can't say that Hollywood wasn't heavy-handed back then in its effect and control on the subjects that they were working with. Um, so in that case, even regardless of like what he was getting at, and I have to assume it does enhance the meaning of the story, even if it's not clear to the audience why it's. But my theory with art is always, even if I don't get it, subconsciously it's having an effect on the audience. So someone can go in and go, I didn't get it. That was dumb. It didn't make sense why he switched to black and white. People can always say that. My theory is if it's done well, and I don't know how well it was done here, but it always has an effect subconsciously, no matter
Mhm.
what. And that can help bring someone to feel a certain way that they don't even know why they're feeling that way. And it
Yeah.
can enhance the meaning of something, even if it doesn't make them know what that meant to them. That's my theory there. So I was okay with it in this case. I love this director's work in general. I love Ana de Armas. Her Hollywood trajectory is absolutely
Oh my
lovely,
god, it's
and I'm
phenomenal.
so glad she got this vehicle.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Adrian Brody and Bobby Cannavale, like give them just if they're the people you're bringing off the bench and they only have small, hell yes, every time. I've
Yeah.
never been mad to see those dudes on a screen.
Hmm.
I think is there any like factual stuff you want to talk about on any of that? Because then I do want to get into the overall take on the movie. Because I
You mean
have like
like what do you mean?
anything you want to reply to from there, because then I'll kind of like move on to my response to what you were saying about what you didn't like about the movie.
No, not really. I mean, I felt like I
Okay.
chimed in exactly on some of the points you were making.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I think it's good. This is definitely one of those movies, and I think we love movies like this where we have to have a conversation about it because it's obvious like you have a different take than I do, which there's nothing wrong with that, at all, But being able to hear why that is very fascinating, interesting. Um, you said there was a moment in the movie, the moment where she's visiting her mom in the hospital, that you had to take a break and you had to kind of leave for a bit. I am always very sensitive when it comes to abuse, like women abuse and all that, because of some things I've experienced in my history and all that stuff like that. So every time I see that portrayed on screen, it really, really frustrates me. I get very angry.
Hmm.
Um, that scene at the end of Requiem of a Dream, where you have I'll just say the dildo scene, right? Like that bothered me big time when I watched that movie. Great movie, and but I couldn't go back and watch it again.
Hell no.
Like anytime I see something that is so raw and real
Yeah.
that is portrayed, it affects me. And unfortunately, this was portrayed a lot throughout this movie. So that could be another
Oh yeah.
reason why I feel the way I feel, right?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, very, very, and like I said, if the intention was there, his story and intention was purposely to emphasize all these things to kind of be like, this is how bad Hollywood is. This is how
Hmm.
bad, people are treated in this space, in this
Hmm.
industry. I'm going to throw it now all back in your faces. And this is, my interpretation of everything. Then kudos. Brave, brave, bold move to do.
Hmm.
And it's he did a perfect job at it because, again, I love this industry. I love movies, but I know it's not all sunshines and rainbows in the back end, right?
Yeah.
Especially during this time, especially during that time. But yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I meant to actually add this before is I went to the Paris Theater in New York City, and I know we like to always talk on our theater review
Yeah.
experience. So this was a fun one. The Paris Theater is the one that Netflix bought
Hmm.
and runs now, and I believe at least before it was they want to give Netflix movies a theatrical release so that they can be qualified for
Yes.
Oscars. That
Yes.
was at least the
Hmm.
reason that
Yep.
made sense. And that's the Oscars still do have the theatrical requirement, and
Hmm.
since COVID, it's coming back, something like that. So I made sure to see it at this theater because this is one of those old school theaters. I believe
Oh yeah.
the building is from the 20s or 30s, something like that.
Hmm.
There's red velvet seats and carpets, and it's very small, but they do a good job, even though like it's not going to be, a Dolby surround sound theatrical
Sure.
experience. A
Yeah.
few of my favorite movies have been at this theater, and it's one of those New York legendary, iconic cinemas. And when it was closing a couple years ago, it was really sad, and then Netflix
Yeah.
saved it. So say what you want about Netflix and their impact on movie culture, but thank you for saving the Paris Theater. Um, there was a line when we got there. There was an air of excitement, and it was a lot of young, cool cinephile folks
Okay.
who are hyped about this movie. I think if you go to like a random, like I'm from Oklahoma, if you go to a random Oklahoma City theater and whatever, it might be folks who are looking for the Marilyn Monroe movie, the Fun Times movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's a Hollywood icon. I love Hollywood icons, and I read People magazine. Let me go check this movie out. Like it's not that movie, right?
Yeah.
This audience seemed primed for an art house theater. It's almost like they all knew who Andrew Dominic was and were like, I'm going to see
Right.
his next movie. Kind of
Yeah.
seeing it there, and I made sure to get front row seat of the balcony. And I normally would like to sit very close to the screen, but I wanted the experience, which you actually see Marilyn Monroe in a movie theater in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted that experience of what you see in old Hollywood movies where you're seeing that old school theater and watching people watch the movie. There was something like it made sense for this movie about old Hollywood to watch it in an old theater where I could see the theater itself. That was very cool. That was a great choice. I loved it, and I also got to every now and then like look down and like see how people were reacting. I will say, while the audience was very enraptured by it, I only saw one person walk out, and I was shocked it wasn't more.
Mm-hmm.
One good reason to see this on Netflix is you get to hit pause or fast forward through the scenes that you can't
Sure.
stomach.
Yeah.
Um, there were a few times where what they're showing on the screen is so horrible and horrific to watch. People had nervous laughter. That's always a tricky one anywhere you are because it seems like they're laughing at something painful. And it's almost like this weird human psychology thing where someone laughs and the other person is crying and they're both having a similar reaction to to the same thing,
Yeah.
but this person's reaction will piss this person off. So I actually felt that and like noticed there was some tension because there's a few times people were perturbed by what was happening on screen. You can't say they thought it was funny or silly, LOL, but they had like a oh my god kind of like reaction
Like
to
a
it, which
yeah, like a defense mechanism kind of thing.
yeah, seriously, for
Yeah.
real. And you, but it was interesting. I would almost recommend, unless you can see it in like a classic theater that maybe Marilyn Monroe could have had a premiere at in the 50s. I would say maybe see this one at home for sure, partially for that reason, so that if you do have a really intense experience, there's not other people there for it.
Right.
Otherwise, I always love seeing a movie in a theater, and I am glad I saw this one in a theater regardless. And it was kind of helpful to like be around other people who are experiencing
Mm-hmm.
something equally like it can be triggering or at least like hard to watch at best.
Yeah.
As far as so I think it's pretty clear like from what I've said so far, I loved the way this movie was made. I loved
Mm-hmm.
the directing, the cinematography, the editing, the acting. As far as the plot and the script and the story and how heavy-handed that was, and they kept showing her going through horrible things. I'm gonna like, and I'm happy to get into it. I'll be more direct than maybe I have been in the past on some things. I think I disagree with that view of storytelling and movies. It's a question of are when you show something on the screen, are you glorifying it? And if the purpose of telling this story is to get across a message, to get at some truth, whether or not it historically happened, it can affect the audience's interpretation, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't determine was it successful or unsuccessful. And similarly, I don't think he was trying to tell the story of Marilyn Monroe's life. And if he was, he would not have made this movie and would not have made a lot of the choices he was. I actually don't think this is a movie about Marilyn Monroe. Obviously, it's a movie about Marilyn Monroe, but at the heart of it, the actual story he's telling is a morality tale of what can happen to a young woman in Hollywood, but also we're getting deeper than that, right? We're going a woman who in society is mistreated at every turn, abandoned, neglected, assaulted, and worse
Mm-hmm.
by essentially everyone in her life at various turns, with very few exceptions.
Yeah.
To the point where I actually won't say this one because it's the only thing that might be a spoiler to folks. But there's a couple people you trust early in the movie who turn out to betray her later on.
Right.
That's the only thing I think actually, especially since this is like based, it's kind of based on a true story, but it's really based on a biographical fiction, which is
Right.
based on someone's life. I think at the end of the day, the most important takeaway from this movie, if you are going to ask for like a message of it, and there's a lot you can take away, but the
Mm-hmm.
one that stood out to me was I talked to a female friend afterward who has an issue with being sexualized.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had conversations about that before. She gets catcalled. I've heard stories of men literally grabbing her in inappropriate ways at the bar. The amount of women who've dealt with these things
Yeah.
in life is essentially so egregious to where any
Yeah.
meninist who wants to say like, oh man, men have it worse, women don't understand, they're trying to get it, any of the things that people say, you listen to like, you just have a few female friends and you hear their stories, dudes, like
Yeah.
just listen for a second and you go,
Seriously.
oh my God, that is
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable. That is so dehumanizing.
Yeah.
I like your defense mechanisms, your coping mechanisms would have to be built up so fucking strong. I know I would crumble. If I tomorrow woke up and started experiencing the dehumanizing reality of what women experience in our society on the day to day, I would not be able to handle it. This friend told me afterward, I hope that men watch this movie and they be, finally understand what it's like to be a woman in this society, that they get
Mm.
it, that how what it's like to be treated like a piece of meat or an object, to be dehumanized, to be overly sexualized, and even like we are looking at Marilyn as a girl who's mistreated by her mother, and so it's not just the Hollywood studio or how men are treating them.
It's
There is
life, her
also the
life.
men. And then, which makes me think of there was something else you said about why did they only show all these awful things? And I think that's the story they're telling. And they actually leave out all the Hollywood glamour icon stuff. Essentially, there's none of that. There's a, basically out of what, a 2 hour, 45-ish minute movie, there's maybe 2 minutes of that. And even those get tainted before or after
Mm.
by these horrible experiences. It's very heavy handed, but they're sending out a strong message of this woman who's essentially like you could look at her as a martyr or um like an icon of dehumanization.
Hmm.
I read her afterward. I didn't do a lot of the like what the movie was and wasn't true articles, which I normally do after biopic, but once I understood like okay, they're not really concerned with the truth as it happened. It's essentially what is true about someone, and you're hearing stories from 70 and 80 years ago, and Marilyn Monroe believed things about herself to be true that weren't true about her
Yeah.
upbringing. So at that point when you like have a question of lost identity and where did I come from, etc., like at the end of the day what people believe about themselves and other people is really what happens and matters in life. If everyone treats you like your skin is purple and your skin isn't actually purple, like you're still, the effects are real of how you're treated and perceived. um, but what I did do is I read her personal life up until Hollywood. That was the only question, was like, what was it really like for her growing up, and how did she become famous? Oh my God, the amount of things they left out that are horrific. This movie doesn't touch on her teenage years. If you don't want to feel like how you felt during this movie, do not read that part of her Wikipedia bio. There's a certain turn in her life that happens around 15, and it is one of the most gut-wrenching things I have ever read happening to a human.
Hmm.
And that was like the Wikipedia, like the summary version. Like we're not getting the details. There's essentially someone who abuses her. She's taken away from them, leaves them, gets taken in by someone else, who then becomes sick and dies. Um, and these might be factually a little bit off, but it's roughly one person gets sick, can't take care of her anymore, so she goes to someone else, and then that family, oh, sorry, yeah, that she finally gets someone taking care of her. That person gets sick, so then she goes back to the abuser because that was her best option. She has to live with them because that is the only option for her in life. And the only reason she's taken away from them is because they are leaving California, and based on state adoption laws, they're not allowed to take her with them.
Hmm.
But she wanted to go with them because that was better than the alternatives. And that's wild. And we're talking about a woman who's stymied and abused and like forced into a certain way of being in order to survive, and people just keep using her and taking advantage of her until she basically has to become a charmer in order to survive. It's like a learned coping mechanism,
Hmm.
and has to become so damn good at that she's a legendary historical icon. And it's still happening to her during that time. The abuses keep piling on, and she eventually dies young because, of course, you do, because the body and the mind take a toll, even if you learn how to survive. I think that's essentially the story that's happening here. I want to rewatch it to see how the director tells that story and some of the cinematography things. And there's this ongoing thing of the bright lights, and there's the camera flash where there's this bright circle, and
Hmm.
there's a moment where she's looking out of a window, and it's this bright white light, and it kind of starts to consume her. she's in the hospital bed and there's the bright circle light that looks a
Yeah.
lot like the paparazzi. There's those things, and then there's this other thing that keeps happening where darkness encloses around her, or kind of like the old Hollywood movie where it kind of goes like
Yep.
the "that's all, folks" kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the movie, I was curious: are they going to end with hope and this white light consuming the screen, or will it go the other way? And it goes the other way. It's her eyes are closing, and they actually show it where it starts to kind of like the blackness of the screen starts to take
Mm-hmm.
over.
Well,
I
she also
don't think
had
I'll ever be
like
able to watch it again.
yeah,
Um,
she also has like that mantra that she repeats to herself when she is either in a difficult state or she's trying to like psych herself out about focusing on the ring light.
yep,
Basically
yep.
focusing on, so that does play heavily throughout the entire movie.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And
Yeah.
then I think the question is she able to transcend her circumstances, or
Yep.
will she succumb to them? And there are times where she transcends them, and she becomes that glowing ball of light, this like transcendent, infinite soul who's the as bright as any like camera flash bulb and the shining star of history. And then the other question is like, or does the darkness take over and does she succumb? And of course, she has to. She's a human being after all, even if people weren't treating her that way. So, while I want to rewatch it and understand what I just said better, I don't know if I'll ever be able to. That's one of those like Requiem for a Dream. Might watch that one time and call it. I know I'll want to because the craft of this movie was so strong. And I do think the message is important. But does that make sense when I'm talking about like this is not a story about Marilyn Monroe? And if it is, this is a fucked up way to do it because you basically took all of her humanity away. I
Yeah.
think it does a good job of telling that story in the way that they strip away her humanity and the bright moments of her life and the times when she's like just having a good, fun, chill time. And
Yeah.
instead, they are telling a different story than the story of Marilyn Monroe, the whole human being.
Yeah. I mean, I understand what you mean by that, and for all we know, you could be right. Again,
No, I am. Yeah,
if we
sorry.
oh, okay, no, that's fine. Um, I'll just you know what? I'll just call up Andrew Dominic right now and have him
Okay, well,
confirm. Like, was this?
you.
Yeah. um, if his main purpose was to not tell a Marilyn story, but
Mhm.
use her as an example to tell the story he wanted to tell, perfectly fine. However, if this in his mind was, no, this is the way I see Marilyn, and this is the way that I think her story should be told, then it's really, really fucked up. It's really, really messed up. But
Oh,
here's
for sure.
my issue with that then. If you wanted to tell a story like this, why use her name in the first place? You could have told a similar story by using fictional characters, doing similar situations and all that stuff like that, and would still have that same effect, in my opinion. Because
Yeah.
my problem with that is because someone who doesn't know anything about Marilyn Monroe will see this on Netflix, like you said. Ooh, a story about Marilyn Monroe. Watch this movie and will think that this is exactly everything that she's about and all that. You have movies that were done in the past, like Jackie and Spencer.
Spencer.
You
Oh,
know,
those are the first two movies I thought of after watching this
yeah.
movie for
So
sure.
same. And
You want them to change those movies so that they're not called
no, 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 no,
Jackie
no,
and
no,
Spencer.
no,
You
no,
want them
no,
to be called
no,
like Tabitha
no. Not
and
that's not
Samantha.
what I meant.
What?
That's not. I know, right? Yeah. That's not
Because
what I
those
meant.
aren't those aren't factual either.
They're not, but they were done, I think, in a still effective manner that they
Mhm.
didn't really have to focus on a lot of like the big negative stuff. I think
Spencer?
Spencer more than Jackie for sure, especially with her, her eating disorders, her depression, and the falling apart of her marriage and her isolation and all that stuff like that. Very haunting stuff, right? For
Mhm.
sure. But again, I think it's all in how you portray it on the screen. It's all how you narrate the story without having to focus so much on every little small aspect of the. Because, like you said, in this movie, Blonde, hardly were there any moments that focused on her like greatest achievements. like, yeah, she was cast in this movie. She was like all this kind of stuff like that, like those were so few and far in between and very fleeting when those moments happen, because it would show and then all of a sudden something bad happens or something was a negative reaction of it. She's watching herself on the screen for the first time and the old geezer next to her like puts his hand on her thigh and all that. It's like there's never one clear moment where she is at peace. Now again, maybe this is really what she went through, and that is very unfortunate. um but my only problem is that for someone who really doesn't know anything about Marilyn Monroe, they're going to go to this movie, they're going to watch this movie, and they're going to see her in a very unfair light, I think, that has been portrayed on
Unfair
her.
towards her?
Yes,
But how,
absolutely.
but it's essentially okay. I the movie is on her side at the end of the day, and the movie is saying what is happening on this screen is bad. Now, it's it's showing horrible things that happen, but like a defense attorney, when they would defend Marilyn Monroe in court, would go through the list of horrible things that happened to her. They're still defending Marilyn Monroe, and they are on her side. So I don't think that this movie is against Marilyn Monroe or casts her out in any way to be a villain in this story or
Oh no, I'm not.
complicit.
Yeah, no, I'm
Anyway,
not
in
saying
fact,
that.
they victimize her. Now, would she want this to be the story that's told about her? I would be surprised if she would say, "Oh yeah, that'll be fun for
Yeah.
everyone to understand this part of my life." But there's there's sometimes the question of like, do I tell someone about this bad behavior from this person in our circle or whatever? And like, I don't want to expose this friend and what happened to them if they don't want to. And of course, in that case, you shouldn't and don't. But there's also one where that friend could say, I want you to tell this story so it doesn't happen to somebody else, right?
Sure.
So I
Yeah.
think that it does, I do agree, and that is the most problematic thing about this. And I do want to find some middle ground where I agree with you. This movie doesn't consider Marilyn Monroe as her whole persona fairly at all.
Mhm.
I think this movie essentially disposes of the question of how should we treat Marilyn Monroe as a full whole human being in order to tell this story. And the other thing you were saying about they should change the name, same with Spencer, same with Jackie, and same with this one. I actually disagree on that. So why they're able to tell this story is because the iconography of Marilyn Monroe is so well documented and well known. If anyone wants to know what awards she won or what movies she was in, they can go online. There are books about her that
Sure.
aren't the what's book off of. So that's not really quick. But then what that allows them to do is go, oh, you have a notion of who this person is. Now we're going to build off of that. Otherwise, you have to do like this the old superhero movie problem. You have to do like a 2 hour backstory and then a 10 minute like what happens at
Right.
the end.
Yeah.
Instead, they get to do 2 hours and 45 minutes because those parts are already established. And in the collective consciousness, Marilyn Monroe is about as established as it gets, especially from someone from 70 years ago, right? Jackie and Spencer, they're essentially using the historical known knowledge and where this person lives in our collective consciousness, and then gets to use that as a springboard to then advance the story or bring in another element and go, well, did you consider this aspect of their life? Are they actually a tragic hero of history and not just
Mhm.
a beautiful, lovely icon that's been preserved in this snapshot from the past? I do agree, though, they are not taking into account the full human experience of Marilyn Monroe. But I also will say there are things that happen in her life that are much worse than what we saw on this screen too. So it's
Sure.
not there are versions where they only focus on the bad and they overly victimize someone. I think this movie, while not everything that happened here we know happened in history,
Hmm.
this narrative of her life and like I think the clear reading of her life is this is what killed her, what this movie is showing. These things added up and had a toll, and she eventually required medication and or drink in order to survive and starts losing her mind at a similar age to her mother, who was a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, and she ends up becoming a victim at the end. She literally is like there's a body and there is a victim. I don't think that this movie overly victimizes her based on the historical account of her life. I would like there to be a fun version of the Marilyn Monroe story, or at least like the more traditional biopic, right? Where it's just like we just want to tell a true and accurate story to their whole life and their whole
With
persona. Do the
Margot Robbie.
Ray,
Like
the
Margot
walk, the walk.
Robbie's now Marilyn. Like,
Okay,
right?
I like that. Yeah, that story that is a movie that will sell a lot of tickets and will be
Sure.
more enjoyable to watch,
Mhm.
and deserves to. It's a story that deserves to be told for sure. I'm glad this story was told, and I think this story needs to be told. And that morality tale that happens at the end of, oh, they had to keep hitting this on the nail for 2 hours and 45 minutes, and they had to bring that point so home because it is so odious what can happen to a woman in this society, and it is so disgusting how someone can be dehumanized over time based on their experiences. If you want to tell that story, this movie was very effective at it in my mind. And
Yeah.
I do think that that's like what the story was about.
I mean, I hope so. No, but I'll say it is very tragic how, again, and I'm sure many women have experienced a lot of the stuff that she experienced, you know. And again, like you said, there's a lot of stuff that was not told in this movie, but how for a very long time she was trying so hard to fight for the separation of Norma Jean and Marilyn. You know, like Marilyn is just my on-screen persona. Marilyn is what I have to do to survive,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm
Mm-hmm.
still Norma Jean.
Mm-hmm.
And how, as the movie progresses and as her life progresses, she starts forgetting about Norma Jean, and it's Marilyn who just fully takes over. And that is just extremely sad up until the very end, where really there is no more Norma Jean, right? And she gets slightly reminded when she receives that package in the mail. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when finally someone refers to her as
Mm-hmm.
Norma Jean one more time, and that's really like her breaking point, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
like where, you know, and then the tragic death and everything like that. So again, this movie did its job, whether it was to punch us in the gut, tell a scathing, raw story of how someone of this stature can be objectified and all that stuff like that. Some liberties here and there. And everyone's going to see this movie, or who decides to watch this movie will, I'm sure, have their own take on it and all that. And like for you and for me, maybe because of our own personal experiences, certain things will hit us harder than others, right?
All right.
But I guess at the end of the day, that is the brilliance of cinema, right? That is the brilliance of this type of storytelling, right? How this type of story, when done in a certain point of view or a certain aspect, can be so gut wrenching or can be so divisive. You know how like it makes me think of, you know, like when a Star Wars movie comes out and you have the Star Wars fans and they're like, "Oh, this is not how Star Wars is supposed to be,"
Yeah.
or you have the other people like, "Oh, this was like one of the best Star Wars movies," and they
Yeah.
say, "Oh, Star Wars is so divisive." No, 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 no. This is the type of story that can be extremely divisive. This is the type of movie that can be divisive because of how someone will react and take on the choices made, what was decided to tell, and all that. I saw someone online refer to this movie as today's Passion of the Christ.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I
You
used the
know,
word martyr earlier. I almost said
right?
Jesus, like she's an icon and a
Yeah,
hero, but also dies around the same age.
right. And how, if you remember back in that time when Passion of the Christ came out, how controversial that movie was. But of course, you're touching religion, and you know, anytime religion is touched, that's when, you know, the floodgates open and all that. But I just do hope. I guess my final thought is going to be for those people who decide to watch this movie and who know nothing about Marilyn Monroe. Maybe they
Mm.
know her because of the face, or because they're in LA once and they see her representation everywhere and all that stuff.
Yeah.
After watching this movie, at least do some due diligence to really
Yeah.
understand who Norma Jean is and who Marilyn really was, because
Yeah.
it, it's not it's not fair to her as a person to just know her for all of this bad stuff. I think it is really important to really understand her wholeness as a person, and to really understand how she had to go through certain things to live and to survive and all that stuff like that. So any other final thoughts from you on this movie?
I think the question that we're kind of getting at is it effective at telling the story it wants to? That'll depend on which seat you're at in the theater and what your human
Yeah,
life experience was before that.
sure.
Was it affecting? I don't think anyone's going to leave this movie and say that was boring. I just wasted
No,
my time.
no.
That I didn't feel it. Nah, that won't happen.
Yeah,
If you want to feel something and are up for it, go for it. I think I agree with the advice for afterward, and I think the
yeah.
other advice for before. I really do think this movie. I was joking earlier that they should have had therapists in the theater, like talking to people on the way out. Like, but no, seriously, like warn your friends before you recommend this
Yeah.
movie to them. Like, people need to see these content warnings. Like, I could genuinely see there was someone who leaves during the theater. I excused myself for a little bit, came back. I could literally see someone like not being okay, and like
Oh yeah.
this movie might this might sound crass. This movie might have a death toll. There might be people who then return to drink because this brings up some experiences, etc. Like, or like whatever it is, whatever their version of how they would respond to that trigger.
Yeah.
Ooh, yo. I've actually thought about that a lot. Like, I want movies to be clearer with we have these 7 things, and if you're not okay
Hmm.
with those, don't watch it. Because I don't want to spoil every movie, but there's some movies I go, I think this one might have some of blank that I can't do because
Yeah.
it'll like be bad for me.
Yeah.
And then I read the Wikipedia plot. I'm like, oh yeah, I can't watch that one. Damn. Like, seriously, that's a real thing for this movie. I'm glad that they told the story. I don't know if I could ever stomach it again. I gave it 5 stars. I think it was well done, no matter what, on
Mhm.
for me. But I do think there's no one who's going to leave that theater without at least like having a reaction to it for sure,
No,
or on
absolutely.
Netflix at home. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the one thing that was interesting about this movie, and like when you watch it in the theater, did you sit through the credits and all that stuff?
I know I needed to leave a little bit
Okay.
after, but
S-
yeah.
Okay. So at the very, very end, after the credits on Netflix, they finally a little too late. They finally flashed a little thing like, if you know someone who's struggling, please tell them to call this number. And I was like, this would have been very helpful if at the very beginning, how some shows
Yeah.
or even movies they do a minor disclaimer saying
Yeah.
this work of fiction or whatever
Right.
portrays blank 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 blank. If
100%.
this is something that you are uncomfortable with or you know someone's struggling with this, please da 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 da. I think it would have been a little bit better if they did that in the very beginning, because no one sits through the damn credits anymore,
Yeah.
and the fact to have that.
No, seriously, do a biographical fiction one. Let people know
Yeah,
this is not. We're not trying to say this is. But
right,
it's one of those things where Netflix maybe gives the creator too much control and says you get final cut. And he's like, I don't want to tell
right,
anyone. I want them to feel it. Like, fuck
right.
off. That's a little sick to do. I totally agree. Actually, what it should have been was like the telethon. There's a scrolling thing at the bottom. It's the phone number at the bottom of the screen. Here's
Right,
a
that
substance
happens
abuse
every now and
hotline.
then.
Here's a suicide hotline.
Yeah,
All the way down. Goodness
yeah.
gracious. I'm glad we're going to talk about someone else who has multiple personas,
Oh
but it
yes,
was a much funner experience, cinematic experience.
absolutely, yeah.
Goodness, for
So
sure.
yeah, so before we move on to our next movie, again, let us know your thoughts and comments about what we just discussed. Was Blonde a movie that you were able to watch? Were you on the fence? Are you gonna decide to watch it now, or maybe not? Let us know in the comments. Again, we love the comments. Comments are very important for this channel and these videos. We love the conversations, and we definitely want to hear from all of you about everything that we talked about. So, moving on to another iconic figure in pop culture, this time in music, David Bowie, Moonage Daydream. So, Moonage Daydream
Yeah.
is what I would consider to be really a pure visual and auditory biopic experience. The way that this movie was put together, and the way it kind of chronicles all the personas that David Bowie kind of like embodied, right? And this is what he was really known for, especially as it all started with the whole Ziggy's Stardust persona and all that, which I thought it was going to be mostly that. But
Mm.
then it was interesting how they woven in his later career and during his moments in the 80s where he was just like well, I'm just gonna basically be a pop icon, and was like, doing like the more poppy dance music, starring in the movies and all that stuff. So it's really, really interesting how they wove in all the different aspects of his career and his creativity. Because basically, if you didn't know David Bowie and just know him from the music, this guy is like an auteur. I mean, he is like a creative mind. He acted, he wrote, he sang, he did art. He did basically anything you could do. He was a fashion icon, for God's sakes. I mean,
Hmm.
like the trends that he would set during his popularity, his moments of popularity. Um, as far as the movie and the presentation's concerned, my main regret is that I didn't get to see this in IMAX,
Mm.
because I think watching this in IMAX, which it was like kind of filmed for, would
Hmm.
have like been like a breathtaking, again, experience of sound and vision, to borrow something from David Bowie there, because literally the audio throughout it all, the visionary effects. They did film some stuff for this to kind of help narrate some of the story, just like, seeing the spaceman on the moon, the alien that kind of sees the dead body and all that stuff. So those are some things that were filmed. They borrowed a lot of stuff from current media. I saw clips from Run Lola Run,
Mm.
Clockwork Orange. Like, they borrowed so many different clips from a lot of different movies, TV shows, and all that stuff like that to kind of help portray the story. There's no narration. You just hear the clips and excerpts from David Bowie's interviews, and like people talking about Bowie like in interviews and all that. Which was very, very well done and edited. But just as a whole, it was so fascinating and beautiful to see his life and career portrayed in this way. Again, just understanding his creativeness and his cycles that he went through. The fact that he took a hiatus just to kind of ramp up and rev up his creative mind, as he goes and travels the world. He was basically a nomad for a very
Mm.
long time,
Oh yeah.
right? Yeah, and it was just so fascinating to see
I
all of
haven't had
that.
a home in years.
Right. Yeah, he's like living in Africa, Germany, all over Europe and all this kind of stuff like that, for like, yeah, for at least 5 years, as he's kind of building his creative mind. And then that's when he decides to come back and do all of these things. And I do love the fact that, one of the common threads that happened at the very beginning was that he talks about how he cannot see himself in relationships because he needs to be able to be creative 24/7, and he has no time for that. But then when he gets to that certain point where, you know what, I am open to love. I think I am now ready. And then they tell this sweet story about meeting Iman and them bonding and getting together and all that stuff like that. And even to this day, Iman loves him to death. You see her talk about him all the time. It was a fascinating documentary. It was very, very, very well done. I was rocking to every time the music would like start
Oh my
playing and all
gosh.
that. I mean, the songs are just so iconic at this point. One disappointment: they didn't cover that moment with him and Mick Jagger doing that damn freaking song and that stupid video. What was it, like dancing in the streets or whatever the case
Uh-huh.
is? Like,
Yeah,
oh my God, they didn't cover any of that. However, I
yeah.
did like the fact that they did cover like when he was doing his like basically when he was being more commercialized. Him and Tina Turner doing the Pepsi commercial. I thought that was really awesome because I totally forgot about that, especially for someone like David Bowie to be exposed in that kind of a light and aspect. But I cannot recommend this movie enough. I feel like anyone who appreciates rock documentaries, musical documentaries about musicians, iconic pop icons, this is definitely something you have to check out. And if you can, do so at a theater because, again, the presentation was really meant for that. But
True.
Blake, what were your thoughts on Moonage Daydream?
It would be responsible for me to recommend to someone that they do a lot of cocaine and LSD before going to the cinema. But if there was a movie, you were going to do that. Um, no, seriously, the cinematic spectacle, I feel like, successfully captured David Bowie's essence.
Yeah.
Um, I had an awesome time. Actually, it's this one we got into Blonde really deep. I don't we There's not as much to say because this
No.
was more of an experience. Like this is
Yeah.
something that washes over you.
Yeah.
By the end, they were like, what did I learn about David Bowie? I'm not sure, but I definitely like felt his aura and essence throughout the
Yeah.
movie. Um, my mom was a David Bowie fan from back in the day. Like she was had the haircut, and that was her scene when she lived in New York in the 1970s. Was like
Hmm.
those people. Um, I was raised on Bowie and at least aware of him. I remember the movie Knight's Tale was the first Bowie song I really like felt and got into. Golden
Yeah.
Years, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you
Yeah.
like that song? Let me tell you about David Bowie."
Nice.
Um,
Nice.
as like an indie hipster dude, like David Bowie's as iconic as it gets for any human in history.
Yeah.
He is so transcendent and so hard to capture and pin down, and he's not very literal. Like he's very fantastical,
Uh-huh.
and he's kind of like the Lil Wayne line where he says, I'm not a human being, I'm a Martian." Like David Bowie just like embodied that throughout
Yeah.
so much of his career and his artistic persona. I did enjoy what you're talking about, where we get to watch him settle down a little
Hmm.
bit and drop some of the rock star facade, which
Yep.
I don't know to what degree, where he was during that time and how much of it was, under the influence and how much of it was like the Lady Gaga thing where they can't leave the house without putting on a big costume.
Right.
Um, but he is absolutely epic at that. And it was also cool to see him in street clothes and painting and being a little
Yeah.
shy and nervous in an interview or whatever. It was really lovely to see all of that. Definitely watch this in the best sound system and best theater you can. I
Hmm.
got to see it in the IMAX Times Square AMC
Oh,
theater,
nice. Very nice.
which made it so much better. And so I wasn't watching it with a critical eye. I wasn't watching it. That's when I realized, like, oh, I'm not going to really like this. Isn't a Talking Heads movie at
Right.
all, where there's just
Right.
like, and then in 1975, Bowie and I went out on the street, and that's when we recorded. Like, it's not that movie
Right.
at
Right.
all. It's the
No, it's not.
opposite.
Hmm.
I didn't know when, because you're saying, right, they put other movies in here.
Hmm.
There are other times where a song is happening and they're kind of doing like a visualizer effect
Hmm.
of like colors splashing on the screen. I was like, are these based on Bowie paintings? Is this just the director getting fun with it?
Yeah.
Um, I didn't. At some point, I just said, I don't mind this. I'm going to turn off a little bit and then
Hmm.
just let this wash over. And that's how Bowie, I think, is best enjoyed and experienced.
Yeah.
Um, when we talked about Elvis, like I had a lot of facts, like, oh, I know this, and this about Elvis, and
Hmm.
this did happen, that didn't. Bowie, it's interesting because he's such a larger than life icon, but literally he can't be pinned down, and I don't
Yeah.
know who he is. And I think some of that's intentional and some of that is part of his
Yeah.
persona. But I also never felt the need, like with Bob Dylan in college, like I studied and read his biographies and his memoirs and like
Hmm.
the amount of research and like there's literal Dylanologists out there.
Sure.
There Bowie doesn't have the same thing, and thank God for it, because essentially what I learned at some point was like, oh, I don't want to capture that essence and put it in a
Hmm.
jar at all. Like it's lightning in a bottle, and it's better to let that thing fly. It is so much more fun to experience the David Bowie documentary this way than
Yeah.
the more traditional documentary. I had an absolutely awesome time with it. So I don't know what all we get into other than I loved it. I had an awesome time.
Yeah.
I recommend it fully, especially if you're a Bowie fan, which everyone at least is going to like some of his songs. Some of them are so
Sure.
iconic. They're like
Hmm.
I don't know what someone would experience and feel if they didn't know Bowie and didn't really know his music or appreciate his persona, whatever. But
Hmm.
it's gonna be hard to find folks like that because he was so popular.
Yeah.
Anyone who likes Bowie definitely recommend. If you don't, I don't know, but like definitely start listening to David Bowie and it'll change your life.
No, for sure. I think this is like a great starting point for someone who doesn't know Bowie. Like if you want to introduce someone to Bowie, like music wise, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
the creative side of Bowie, this would be like a great start, for that person.
Huh. Okay.
Because the
Yeah.
the the biopic or documentary, however you want to call it, really focuses just on his creativity. It really
Yeah.
focuses on his creativity and his persona, right? Like it
Yeah.
dives in a little bit about how he thinks. You're right. He talks in a lot of theories and philosophy and a lot of like storytelling, right? Like it's very hard to hear him talk about himself extremely seriously and matter of
Hmm.
factly and be like, no, I do like to sit down and drink some tea and all that. No, it'll be just like, I lavish in the flavor of, whatever,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm trying to do my Bowie here, but he always, he's, his persona is very fantastical and he carries
Yeah.
himself that way. I love the scenes, especially like when he's just trying to be like kind of normal Bowie and he's like standing in customs just waiting for the person to check him out and he's just
So
like
good.
looking over the
So
desk
good.
wondering what that guy's doing and everything and
Uh-huh.
like everyone around him is like, do you know who this guy is? Like why is it
Yeah.
taking so long? um so yeah, you're right. You're not going to get the full details about every aspect of Bowie's life. You're not going to know a lot about, him growing up and being involved in this and da 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 da. I was lucky enough to catch the David Bowie exhibit that toured around.
Mm.
I
Dang.
believe here in the States, it was in Chicago, New York. I actually saw it in Japan because I happened to visit Japan and it just
Whoa.
opened there.
Cool.
So I was like, oh, I get to finally catch it here, right?
Nice.
There, you do learn a lot about Bowie's career and person, as like his music writing process, how he grows up, how he grew up. One thing that I learned that was very fascinating is that he created this musical software that helped you determine the type of beats you want to put in your music, and he kind of patented it and everything like that. And a
Mm.
lot of people ended up using it.
Wow.
He was helping people produce music and all that stuff like that.
Mm.
Because if the one thing that this picture describes is that there's the Bowie that all he cared about was playing around with sound and kind of like uh, the technology behind creating music and sound, and
Mm.
he was playing around a lot with that. Then
Mm.
when you went into the '80s, he kept it simple, and like I said, he kept it like poppy and kind of dancey and all that stuff. And then so on and so forth. So it was just really
Mm.
interesting when you read the fine details behind the scenes, how very key and instrumental he was in creating a lot of that stuff and kind of teaching people how to do it and using in helping people create their music and all that. So very fascinating stuff. Plus, you also know more about his fashion choices and what his phases and all that stuff like that. But this was just a fun documentary to watch. Something at one point, like you said, when it was popping up like those colors and
Mhm.
those designs and like all the psychedelic stuff, I felt like I was at a planetarium watching like those like rock planetarium
Yeah,
type
yeah,
of
yeah.
movies and all that,
Exactly.
but
A little
in
bit
a
of Terrence
better
Malick
way.
going on too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It not like the cheesy way, but like this was
Yeah.
like 100 times better than that. But it
Yeah.
kind of had that
Mm.
feeling at one point.
For
But
sure.
yeah, no, this was a great documentary. This was a great film. It definitely catch it. I'm glad I was able to see it. Glad you enjoyed it. Glad you saw it in IMAX too, because I could only imagine how
Mm.
phenomenal that felt like. But
Yeah.
yeah, let us know. Are you a Bowie fan? Do you love Bowie's music? Are you a fan of Labyrinth? Or maybe one of his any other movies that he started.
What
Let
was
us
the
know in the
one?
comments. What?
Sorry, the man, the
The
oh, it
Man
was
Who
the
Fell to
weird
Earth?
movie. Yes, I
Yeah.
tried watching that. That was one of my COVID movies where I was like, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
I go through my watch list. This movie was more similar to that because it was just like an experience that like
Oh yeah.
didn't make literal sense, and it was a very
Yeah.
like induced experience. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do like what you said though. I was saying, yeah, if you're a Bowie fan, you'll love this. If you're not, this is actually, you're right. This is a good like appetizer sampler,
Yeah.
and it's a quick way to access the essence of Bowie
Yeah.
without like the Wikipedia page isn't going to do it at all,
No.
right? He's more of an experience. I'm glad you got to go to the
Hmm.
experience. I'm glad I got to go to the IMAX. I'm glad that David Bowie exists and that they made
Oh
this
hell
movie.
yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, it's great. So definitely do check it out. Um, Great movie of his. He wasn't a main character, and he did a great role in The Prestige, as he played Nicholas Tesla. Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably his best
yeah,
actual like the
I
movie Christopher Nolan of
love
it.
that. Oh
Hell
yeah,
yeah.
I loved him in that movie. It was
Hell
so
yeah.
perfect. It was so Bowie. Like that
Yes.
is like Bowie personified right there. So if you're a fan of Bowie, if you're a fan of any of those movies, if you're a fan of his music, let us know in the comments. Let us know if this was something you were able to watch. If you're dying to watch it, let us know your thoughts on everything. But that pretty much ends our episode of Movie Time this week. Before we go, thank you so much for watching and listening. Blake, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Go to letterboxd.com. My screen name is Blake Wolf SSN, and you'll see me give both the movies we talked about today 5 stars on there.
Nice. Very nice. And as for me, I am Rene. You could see all the handles and tags and whatever what you want to call it. Twitter, Instagram, here, of course, on YouTube. Thank you again for watching, checking us out. For all of those who are regulars, we appreciate your support as always. Again, if you're brand new and you haven't done so already, hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. If you prefer an audio version of this, do a search for Lowkey Geek on your podcast platform of choice, and you could find the channel and download this episode and so much more. So as we close out in our own little Moonage Daydream episode here, stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace out, everybody.